Welcome to another edition of the Hardwood Huddle. My name is Randy Zellea from backsportspage.com. With me, as always, he is the greater power. He is Lord Vader. He is our Jedi Knight. He is Bill Ingram. Bill, good episode again today. We have Mark Followill. He is the voice of the Dallas Mavericks. And today he's talking to us not only about the Mavs, but he's talking about his career, how he got started, and pretty much everything Texas.
Absolutely. Should be good. He's a local product. He went to the University of North Texas. He's from the area. And so in very many ways, he has the fun job of covering the teams that he grew up watching and loving. So it's the kind of job that a lot of people wish they could have.
What's amazing about him, too, is he just does not do basketball. He does soccer. He does football. He's a savant. He can do everything. And I was looking for an excuse to use the word savant today, and I think that was it. Yeah.
Well, I think the key is to understand when somebody's passionate about something and they're determined to be successful, they will do what it takes, and like he covered some Big Ten football games and had never followed the Big Ten. There's research involved, much like when I was courtside for games all the time, and I would spend all my time studying the visiting team because, of course, I know the home team, the Mavs or the Rockets or the Spurs or whatever, but you'd look at the visiting team and I'd spend an hour or two prepping for all the people and reading up on all the players, because when you walk in the locker room, you don't know who's going to be there. The star player may be there, but there might also be two or three other guys who have something interesting to say. If you know who they are, you know what to ask.
Yeah, the first time I ever went to the Spurs locker room, Duncan, Ginobili, Parker, nobody was available. AJ Price, available. So real quick, please follow the show on our YouTube channel. Also, backsportspage.com has all of our archives. You can also listen to the Hardwood Huddle on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, pretty much anywhere you want to find your podcast. Bill and I are there. And we're also there on the Death Star as well. So check out this Mark Followill coming up right now here on the Hardwood Huddle. Welcome back to the Hardwood Huddle. Our guest right now, the voice of the Dallas Mavericks. I swear, I hope I don't pray that I don't butcher your last name. Mark Followill, the voice. Okay, excellent, Mark. Thanks for that. And, of course, Bill Ingram joining me as always. Mark, thanks for giving us a few minutes today. What a weird time in the NBA, isn't it? Especially, with we were just talking before we came on the air about traveling, doing away games via home. How has that been for you? How has this pandemic affected the way we broadcast games?
Well, it certainly affected it. I mean, in our case, we do all the games from American Airlines Center, and that includes road games, of course, not just the games that are actually being played there. So it's affected things. We all have health screening that we have to do that we could do on our own at our house and then do it basically again when we get into work. So there's obviously a lot of aspects from a protocol standpoint that we're all dealing with. But I've said in a lot of interviews, I think at this point in time in the world, there's so much happening and there's a lot of hardship and a lot of suffering, and a broadcaster is being challenged in the way they do their job is probably pretty low on the list of hardship and suffering out there. So I don't want to make too big of a deal out of it. It's different and it's challenging, and we're all doing the best that we can with the situation to make our broadcast as good as possible. And I think I feel good about what we're doing. I feel good about what other networks are doing, other teams are doing with their local broadcast, and hopefully the teams themselves will be able to get through this surge of cases that we're seeing around the league and navigate through this and maybe get I think every league. I know I'm covering a lot of ground here on the first answer. But every league that's kind of started a season went outside of a bubble situation. I do FC Dallas games here in Dallas, so Major League Soccer. Major League Baseball, as we know, went through this. The NFL has gone through this. And it really was kind of an all-year-long deal in the NFL, but I think in Major League Baseball and Major League Soccer, it did take a little while to kind of get their protocols dialed into exactly what they wanted. And then after some outbreaks at the beginning of the year, for the beginning of the season, that is, for both of those leagues, kind of like what we're seeing with the NBA right now, they kind of dialed those in better, and that tailed off as those respective seasons went along. So hopefully the same thing's going to happen here with the NBA.
How was it for you in the bubble? Did you travel down to Dallas? So down to Orlando, or did you stay in Dallas and do it from the studio?
Everything was in studio in the bubble. We just did it a little bit differently than we are right now, in that the games were done from a studio that was constructed, a room that was made into a studio at the Fox Sports Southwest headquarters, which is in Irving, which is a suburb of Dallas. And then we did all of the games like that. Whereas now we're doing everything from facilities that are at American Airlines Center. But yeah, we did everything from Irving, Texas for the bubble in Orlando. And that's what everybody did, other than the national network broadcast that you saw down there. I remember seeing Breen and Van Gundy and those guys, and a lot of the TNT guys down there as well. So those are the only broadcasts that were there on site.
Is this I feel like, and my daughter is heavily involved in the arts. She's been, this past weekend, she was in 6 shows of Annie, and they're doing a whole lot of social distancing, North Texas Performing Arts. There's something to be said for, we need sports, we need the arts, we need concerts, we need Hamilton, we need these things because this is what people turn to when other things in life are uncertain. We look for those things that are certain. We look forward to the next Mavs game, the next, whatever it is. Is this, I kind of feel like maybe sports is playing, even though there are many challenges with players being COVID tested, and we see games postponed because of not having enough players. That's happened twice now. But isn't this kind of like sports is even more important now when we have these uncertainties and now political uncertainties? Last week, a lot of mess happening. This is kind of a grounding point. MFFL, if you live in Dallas, hey, the Mavs are one of the staples that you rely on. And I feel like, and I'd like to get your opinion, that maybe sports means more now than it usually does.
I think on some level I agree with that, because I certainly understand that there are people who, like you said, this is kind of grounding, and it represents a return and sense of normalcy. So there's a part of me that agrees with that, but also I think I look at where some of the ratings were and all the conversations that launched last year. And I think to some degree, I feel like that probably what has transpired in the last 10 months in all of our respective lives have opened our eyes to think about some other things and to consider other things in life, and the importance of family and quality time with people that you really care about, and focusing on other aspects of life. So I think that on some level, I agree with what you're saying, but also I would like to submit for consideration that for probably some, they've probably taken stock and reevaluated and spent their energies and devoted their energies to different things in their life, maybe than looking to, sports to entertain them. And I think, and by the way, I think your question is really good too, just not about sports, but about performing arts as well, and concerts and things like that, because, that's very, very important also. So it's a great question. I'm not sure I have a great answer to it, because, kind of like I would say about what people want out of a sports broadcast. You could ask 100 people and get 100 different answers. So that's probably the same kind of thing, what you're asking me about, Bill. But I would suggest that for some people, yes, it's taken on an even greater importance, because it's an escape from the difficulties that we are seeing in the world around us right now. And for others, I would suspect that the difficulties that we're seeing have been a time for them to reevaluate and focus on other things and elevate other things to a greater degree of importance in their life.
Having being a Texas native, I'm going to transition back to you a little bit here. Being a Texas native and being involved with the Mavericks for as long as you have, how is it for you, being a homegrown guy, being able to call games for some of the staple, not only basketball, but staple franchises in the state of Texas? How is that for you, being a homegrown guy?
Oh, it's a tremendous experience. And it is, this is a bit of a worn out saying, but it's the dream job, to get to call your hometown team, for sure. When I was a kid, and I don't know if you guys remember this or not, but and this particular thing still exists, by the way. There's something called the pass book, and it's like this 800-page book of coupons that you could order at the beginning of each year. Back in the 80s, we would get the pass book, and it's a lot of it is buy one get one free at restaurants, or buy one get one free admission to amusement parks and things like that. And that was how we went to Maverick games, because the Passbook always had a coupon for buy one, get one free upper level Maverick game tickets at Reunion Arena. Of course, about 6 to 8 games that you could use it on. So we got to see a lot of the Benoit Benjamin era Los Angeles Clipper games. And, you know, with all due respect to him, of course, and the Clippers of that era.
But if you're watching, we apologize now.
Yeah, that's we got to see a lot of those kind of games and things like that. But yeah, that's when that was how you saw in person Mavericks basketball, and you spent most of your time listening to it on what was then the flagship radio station in Dallas, WBAP 820. Back in the 80s, so that they were the big time sports properties radio station here at the time, in KRLD, who carried the Cowboys back then, and the Rangers and Mavs were on 820. So that's how I listened to games and got to see a handful in person. We didn't have much cable, and what we did not have what was then the TV home of the Mavs, HSC. So it's really, really neat. I think the one thing that it does, which some people watching the telecast might think it's a great thing. Some people might think, God, this guy knows too much. Who cares what happened in 1986 and how it relates to the Mavs in 2020? But I like to say I've got a savings bank of Mavericks information that's had a whole lot of deposits in it, and
it's the best theory ever. It's the best theory ever.
There's always easy. It's always easy to make a withdrawal from the Mavs savings bank that's going on up here from all of the goofy things that I remember in the past, and just moments that happen now that maybe can relate to some things that have happened with the franchise in the past. So I've got a pretty good feel for that, and again, it's all a matter of personal opinion. It's subjective. Maybe that helps the broadcast, maybe it doesn't, but it's a really neat thing, obviously, to be involved in. And I think where that really stands out to me is all that knowledge of the past. Is this year, I do some other things. As I mentioned, Major League Soccer. I did some games this year. It was great. I did a few football games for the Big Ten Network this year, and not growing up in that part of the country and really immersing myself in that conference for the first time in a way that I never had before. We've all watched Big Ten games, of course, talking about, real in-depth immersion into games to be able to prep to do the broadcast. You realize, okay, I don't know as much about these teams, and I don't have this just long history with these teams and this, savings bank of information about them. So, it really made preparation for those broadcasts important. Not to say that I don't have a lot of prep for a Mavs game, but obviously there's past experiences that I have that I can always lean on.
It's funny you say that, because my first NBA game was a Clippers game in Houston. I grew up in Houston listening to Bill Worrell and, McCoy McLemore. They were the TV guys, maybe the radio guys too. We didn't have HSE either. We only had so we got the road games on 20 Vision, and then I never had the home games because my parents would never subscribe to HSE. But I have that same bank of Rockets information, even though, of course, I had spent almost 20 years being down there with you at Reunion and then American Airlines Center. My first game at Reunion Arena, I ducked into, you probably remember the visitors locker room was sort of like under the bleachers. You kind of had to duck into this triangular door and sort of, and I'm only 6'4". I was like, man, how do these guys get in here? But I ducked in and stood up, and there's Akeem Olajuwon sitting there. And
wow.
Of course, I got to know Akeem over the years, and he invited me to his house. We did some feature stuff with him when he was working with LeBron and Kobe and all those guys. But you never forget that first kind of experience.
Yeah, for sure.
And for me, growing up, much like you, watching the Rockets, to have access to the Rockets and used to do a lot of stuff in Houston was great. But one thing I'm really interested in from your standpoint is I didn't go to college to do this. I didn't go to college to be a sports writer or a TV analyst or all the stuff we did with Hoops World over the years and USA Today Sports. I went to college because I love literature and reading, and I have 2 degrees in English. But you actually, this was kind of your thing from the beginning, right? This was early on. You decided in college, this is what I want to do, and you chased it collegiately first of all.
Yes, and be prepared for maybe a lengthy answer, because you've touched on one of my passions right now, of course, and so yes, I went to North Texas in 1989. I had a lot of interest at the time, and some scientific interest of geography and geology, and I played the trombone in high school, and so that was something I was kind of
as did I. I was a music guy.
Yes.
I went to school for music actually, and I turned over to communications. But but I'm with you. Cool.
I spent a semester dabbling in that at North Texas, and you don't dabble in trombone playing or any kind of music at North Texas because their music school is one of the best in the country. And so it's like, okay, small fish in very big pond. I'm going to go ahead and jump out of the water here. So that lasted a semester. But anyway, my time at North Texas from 1989 to 1992 was really important. I worked at the campus radio station. Some work at the campus TV station, much more radio because that was my initial interest before obviously getting into TV with the Mavs back in 2005. I had done radio several years for the Mavs before that, but my radio was my initial interest way back when. And, we had a great program at North Texas, a campus radio station where I got a lot of reps, a great teacher in Bill Mercer, longtime voice of the Dallas Cowboys and for a few years the Texas Rangers, Chicago White Sox. Many remember him from world-class championship wrestling in the 80s in the Dallas-Fort Worth area as well.
Jerry,
Bill,
those guys, yep.
Yeah, Bill was a great, was the sports broadcasting professor and still going strong. He's not working there, but, we communicate by email. He's like 92 or 93 years old. And we stay in touch and everything like that, as he does with many of his former students. So Bill was a great teacher in my experience at KNTU, the campus radio station, and all the contacts and the things I learned there. I mean, my life isn't where it is today without my time collegiately at North Texas. So that then, of course, led to the most recent thing that's happened in my life, which is this started well before the pandemic, of course. But back in 2017, I started taking Spanish classes online through community college here in Dallas, just to get better in that regard. And I was enjoying it so much. I left out the part, by the way, where in 1992, I left school early before I had a degree because I had a chance to start working in radio. It's like, okay, well, I'm going to start working. So, maybe not the best decision in retrospect, but it all turns out the way it's supposed to. So in 2017, start taking some Spanish classes in community college online here in Dallas. After 4 semesters of that, I thought, you know what? I'm really digging this. I want to keep doing it. So I'm going to go back and investigate how I can finish up my degree doing online stuff at North Texas. So I did that and just finished that up this past year. So
Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. So that finished up technically in December, although our outdoor adjusted commencement ceremonies were at Apogee Stadium in Denton in November. So, if you check on my Instagram or something like that, there's a picture of me on there in a green cap and gown from Apogee Stadium in North Texas a few months ago. So that was really exciting. And the cool thing, Bill, like you were talking about having degrees in English, is that, this going to school later in life thing, the degree that I had was kind of a compilation of different things, which what they call at North Texas a Bachelor of Applied Arts and Sciences. So I took classes in anthropology and history and Spanish and geography and a lot of things that I was really interested in. So that was really cool to get to do that. So, there's things you learn when you go to school from a communication standpoint that help you in radio and television. But I would tell anybody that is interested in getting into radio or TV, knowledge of other things is very, very important as well. And it's been really fun to reconnect and re-engage with learning of different things, in that particular fashion at this stage in life.
It's funny you say that because I got my master's just a few years ago because my daughter was born in 2011. Which she was born about a week and a half after the Mavs won the championship. So I used to joke with Mark, hey, thanks for holding the finals in Dallas this year, because otherwise I wouldn't be covering it. I'd been in, like we were in San Antonio all the time. I just seemed to live in San Antonio during the June for the finals.
Yeah.
But that led me to get my master's degree because I knew that I couldn't be sitting courtside in the locker rooms and all that while I just couldn't handle being away from my daughter. And we traveled a lot. If the Mavs were home, I was here, but when the Mavs went on the road, I was in Houston or San Antonio or OKC or somewhere else, with different teams because we covered all the teams, not just our local teams. Mm-hmm. I do think that right there, where you have your area that you're working in, that you're kind of an expert in, but having that groundedness in other areas gives you such an ability to relate, especially to people, because you meet players and coaches and general managers who have backgrounds in different things. And when you've had a little bit more of a variety of experience, it gives you the ability to relate to them in ways that maybe not everybody can relate. And I think your job in particular where you've got some time, and we've talked to several guys in your position about
Mhm.
it, but you've got time where the Mavs are winning by 20, they're losing by 20, and strictly speaking, you've got to pull something else into the conversation in order to not just talk about this big lead or whatever. How challenging is that when you have those times?
They're certainly challenging. I think, from my perspective, I would say that the games where you're in front, like we just had that game against the Clippers. Remember, guys, where the Mavs led by 50 at halftime. I mean, that was the NBA record.
I thought that was the Cowboys game. I was with my daughter at a rehearsal, and my nephew texted me and said the Mavs are up some 77-22, or Dallas is up 77-22. I said, dude, I don't follow the Cowboys. What do I care about that? He's like, no, the Mavs. I was like, what?
Yeah. That must have been crazy. With not only that, there's Tim Capstraw, who does the color for Brooklyn. And I worked with him when he was with the Nets.
Mhm.
He always used to tell me some great stories. And I remember him telling me a story when Lawrence Frank was still the coach there. Nets were getting blown out, and Lawrence picked up a technical, and the ref was just going back and forth with Lawrence. And Tim told me a story about when he was coaching. He basically said he was trying to pick up a second technical so he can kick that. The referee looked at him and he says, if I have to watch your team, you have to watch your team, so I ain't throwing you out. So, Mark, I want to finish up with talking about this year's Mavs team and the way the team is performing so far. We're only about 10 games into this, what's going to be abbreviated season, 72-game season. You guys are obviously waiting for KP to come back.
Which could happen as early as tonight.
Yeah, which is happening as early as tonight. You do have some very, very good pieces with Tim Hardaway, and what is the shelf life for this team? How far can this team go, do you think?
Well, it's a great question, Randy. I think I would say that the answer to that, to me personally, is, growing up and watching, we just all watched The Last Dance during pandemic time and saw how, that growth of the Bulls get in. Michael Jordan scored 63 against Boston, but of course it's just, it's Jordan and the Jordaners. So, they're getting bounced out in the first round. And then you get to the point where you win some rounds in the playoffs, and then you come up against Detroit, and it's just, this linear progression. So maybe I think of things too much of that era of the NBA still here. So for me, what I would like to see the Mavs do last year was get in and just savor the flavor of being in the playoffs and learn about what it takes to play and compete at that level. And I thought playing against the Clippers, even though they lost the series, was really good because the Clippers have obviously a toughness and a mean streak about them, about the way they play. And I thought that was good for the Mavs to experience that and learn a little bit about that. Now this year, to me, it's like if you want to keep the progress going, then just getting in is not what it's all about this year. It's getting in and being positioned well enough, which means you got to be in the top 5 in your conference, really, because if you're 6, 7, or 8, your odds of winning aren't very good, especially 7 and 8. Some 6 seeds win about 25% of the time or so, but realistically, you want to be in the top 5 because those 4 or 5 series are kind of coin flips. So being in that position to win a first round series is what I would like to see them do, and I think that they're capable of doing that. The thing I would add to that is that and I say this often in my interviews, if Carlisle were listening to this conversation, and Luka or anybody else for the team for that matter, they'd say, well, why are you limiting it to winning 1 round? We think we're better than that. We have higher aspirations and higher goals for ourselves in that. And Rick says that, and Luka says that, and everybody for the team says, we're not thinking about just winning a round and hanging a banner because we win 1 round of the playoffs. They have bigger expectations and aspirations. It's way too early for me to really comment on what they could do in that regard because so many twists and turns exist in an NBA season. And we just, you never know who's going to be healthy and how it's going to come together for you. So that's probably what they're capable of doing is probably a better question to ask me on the eve of the playoffs, I would say. Let's see how they're positioned.
I'll definitely check back in with you on that point too.
Yeah. But in all seriousness, I mean, for me, asking me as we're recording this today on January the 11th, for me, my goal is to see this team get in and win a round of the playoffs. And that would represent taking a step forward. Their goal, admittedly, is higher than that, but I think it's realistic and understandable. Success creates expectation. And the Mavs had some success for the first time last year in 4 years. They were in the playoffs. They hadn't been to the playoffs since 2016 last year when they went. As you guys know, they have an MVP caliber player in Luka. And so that, those kind of things create expectation. And I think what the scenario I just laid out is a reasonable expectation as we talk right now. And let's see if there's a chance that they can do more than that whenever we get to playoff time.
Randy will tell you that one of my common refrains whenever the Mavs come up or coaching comes up, I think Rick Carlisle is one of the most underrated coaches ever. And I've gotten to know, as you have, many great, from Phil Jackson to Rudy T to, run off all the names, and Popovich. But I really feel like the way that Rick can get something from a player. I never remember Sean Marion. I was talking to him one time when he first came to Dallas. And when Carlisle sat him down and said, "You're a post player now," and Matrix was like, "No, I'm not. I'm not a post player." And Rick said, "Well, you can either continue to play pro basketball and be a post player, or you can not." Matrix, I hated it. It was one of the ugliest shots in the league. That little flip in the post that but it went in. I mean, it worked. And I feel like the way that the last few years, the Mavs have gone from chasing every free agent and trying to keep cap space open like they did after the finals, to really developing the guys over a 3, 4, 5 period of time. You start to have corporate knowledge and chemistry that I think is lost on a lot, like the Clippers, for example, teams that are just trying to throw together big names all the time. To me, that's something that gives the Mavericks hope if, and this is always the if, and it's true for every team, but if they're healthy, if Porzingis and Luka are healthy when the playoffs start, I don't see how they don't win a playoff series.
Well, that's I love what you're thinking there. I love what you're saying. And man, we actually use that term, and there are coaches on our staff that use the same term, corporate knowledge. Bill, I mean, we say that that is an actual Maverick term of people talking about guys that have been around a long time, and they have corporate knowledge of what the culture is with the Mavs and what their system is from an offensive and defensive standpoint. Not to say that system doesn't change, of course, over the years and is always being tweaked and it evolves and things like that. But we actually, that is verbatim a term that we use around the organization, and we use it on the broadcast sometimes as well. So that's really cool that you bring that up. And there is something to be said for continuity would be another way that you would put it. And, Maxi Kleba, Dorian Finney-Smith, those guys are a couple of really good examples of players who were young, undrafted players who came in here and the Mavs have developed. Obviously, Jalen Brunson, who they drafted in 2018. And this, of course, isn't even talking about Luka, who's now in his third year here. But, they certainly have several guys that have been with the team for several years now that have seen their games grow and develop in their time here. So there's absolutely a lot to be said, especially this year where things are weird and the start to the season was so quick. And even though Luka will say that even bringing in a couple of new guys was something that contributed to their slow start. They were 2-4 before they just won 3 games in a row to get over 500 for the first time this year. But I do think there's a level of continuity and familiarity here that helps, because there's a core group of guys that have been here at least a minimum of 2 years, and in some cases 4 or 5 years now, and that's certainly a good thing. And Bill, you asked me earlier. I didn't finish up my answer to this question. I distracted myself about which I do that from time to time about the challenges of doing blowout games. Whether or not your team is behind or whether or not your team's in front. I would say the one thing that's really important about that to me, they're hard when you're down. Because if you're having too much fun, I mean, you hear from fans who are watching the game at home. It's like, well, why are you guys laughing? We're down by 30. It's like, well, I mean, we can't, we got to make this as good as we can and make it as entertaining as we can and get it to the finish.
So entertaining, yeah.
Yeah. So it's like, we're not happy the team's getting blown out, but we're also trying to do the best television we can, not act like that, we're presiding over a funeral here just because the team got their butt kicked today, because that's going to happen in an 82-game NBA season, or 72, as we're experiencing this year. But I've always found that when you're in front, when you're doing the game and your team is in front by 30, you can laugh and have fun and everybody's okay with that. But I do think that there's an element of that you have to be careful and make sure that you're being respectful of what's going on the floor, and particularly the other team. There is a reason where, you guys have seen many NBA blowouts, and when you get to the last minute, the team that's way in front will do the sporting thing and run out the clock on the last possession. They won't take a shot. They'll take a shot clock violation if they get the ball with 35 seconds to go. they'll take a shot clock violation with 10 seconds left rather than put up another shot. And so I think there's an element of, you want to make sure that you respect the group that's out there on the floor, even though they're getting their butt kicked by 30, because the last thing you would ever want to do would be, that team is going to be thinking about getting a little payback the next time. And you would never want to be the guys who like, oh man, and I heard that Maverick broadcast was just laughing their butts off at us too. They were clowning on us as well. So we really got a little something extra for them. So, who knows if anything like that would ever happen. But I think we've always tried to approach it of have fun, make it as entertaining as you can, but be respectful of everybody out there because, we have a former player on our telecast, Derek Harper, who was in the league for 16 years as a player, and Jeff Wade Skin, who's our other analyst on the broadcast. He's been around basketball his whole life. His dad was a coach. So, we all understand, I think we do anyway, what the NBA is about. And part of that is respecting your opponent and respecting the game and treating all of those things, with that frame of mind whenever you get into those blowout telecast situations.
Great. Mark, we appreciate you giving us some time. Let's let everybody know where they can find you on social media.
Sure. At Followill is my Twitter. Mark.Followill is my Instagram. So you get a few pictures of NBA cities and restaurants and various things like that on there. So although no traveling right now, but a few pictures of things that I come across that I think might be interesting. So that's a little bit less work oriented and more life thoughts oriented there. But Followill on Twitter for Mavericks and other sportsy information that I come across.
Well, listen, we appreciate it. And thanks for coming into the huddle.
Yeah, you got it. It's a pleasure to talk to you guys. Bill, Randy, all the best to you and keep up the great work.
Hopefully we'll see you in person again before too super long.
Yeah, that would I love Zoom, but yeah, seeing each other in person would be an exciting thing for sure.
Thanks, Mark. Appreciate it. All right, that was Mark Followill here on the Hardwood Huddle. Bill, great interview. Really enjoyed it. And the thing to me is he's very down to earth. He was very, very upfront and honest. My favorite part of the interview was him actually saying that if he ever talked to Mark Cuban or talked to the players or the coaching staff about goals and where they're going to go, he's being realistic by saying, hey, a playoff series win is a good thing, whereas the players are just, of course, like championship or bust. That was my great takeaway from the interview.
Well, I agree. And when you look at where the Mavs are, they're not a championship team. Maybe if, and this is the killer if, is always if they're healthy, but in particular if Kristaps Porzingis is healthy. But you got to figure this guy, for them to win a championship, he has to play 16 games where they win.
Yes.
And win 4 games each series. They could play 20, but he's got to play 16. They got to have him for 4 games in each series. And based on what I've seen from Kristaps Porzingis, that's just not going to happen. So now you say, if you get to the playoffs and KP is not in the picture, can they win a playoff series? Well, that would be quite an accomplishment. But win the championship, there's no way, no chance.
Well, not only that, but I think that the Knicks got the better end of that deal because they know with Porzingis, they knew after year 2, he's an international player who's not being able to play a full season, a full 72, 82 game season. It's just not in the cards for him. So that's just the way it is with Porzingis. And Mark Cuban and the Mavs had to learn that. So learning that the hard way now. He's not an 82 game guy. But then again, find me stars in the NBA these days who are 82 game guys, and that's a whole nother conversation.
Most of them choose not to play.
Well, that's the thing. Some of them choose not to play.
Guys that would play 82 games if they could, like Luka Doncic, you're not going to easily get him off the court. But too many of the guys are worried. I mean, the guys we're only playing 72 games, and guys are already taking games off. What is Kyrie Irving doing?
Kyrie Irving's only going to play 10 games this year. That's just we'll talk more about that in the next episode. But Bill, this was a fun episode. Real quick again, you can find all of our archives at the Back Sports page. All right, that was Mark Followill here on the Hardwood Huddle. Bill, great interview. Really enjoyed it. And Spotify. The thing to me is anywhere you can find podcasts. We're there. We're on YouTube. My favorite part of the interview was him actually saying that our new YouTube channel will be starting up. Ever talk to Mark Cuban, let them know where they can find it. Talk to the players or the coaching staff about goals and where they're going to go. He's being realistic by saying, hey, a playoff series win is a good thing.
Where I write about anything,
whereas
but,
the players are just, of course,
usually
like
not sports
championship
at
or
all.
bust.
So
That was my great
that's where you
takeaway
can
from the
find
game. And I'm over at Randy
Well, I
BSP
agree.
on
And
Twitter and
when you look at where
Instagram,
the Mavs
and of course I'm on
they're not a
Facebook.
championship
And
team. Maybe
that's about it. Of course,
if, and
backsportspage.com for
this is the
all
killer
of
if,
your
is always
sports
if they're
needs.
healthy.
We have a lot of great shows, a
But
lot
in
of great
particular, if
podcasts,
Kristaps
a
Porzingis
lot of
is
great
healthy,
young
but you
writers
gotta figure
making
this
their
guy, for
debut,
them to win a
and
championship, he has to
follow the
play
journey with
16
them.
games
For Bill
where they
Ingram, I'm
win.
Randy Zellea. This
And
you're
win
now
4
out of the
games
huddle.
each series. They could play 20, but he's got to play 16. They got to have him for 4 games in each series. And based on what I've seen from Kristaps Porzingis, you're not. That's just not going to happen. So now you say, if you get to the playoffs and KP is not in the picture, can they win a playoff series? Well, that would be quite an accomplishment. But win the championship, there's no way, no chance.
Well, not only that, but I think that the Knicks got the better end of that deal because they know with Porzingis, they knew after year 2, he's an international player who's not being able to play a full season, a full 72, 82 game season. It's just not in the cards for him. So that's just the way it is with Porzingis. And Mark Cuban and the Mavs had to learn that. So learning that the hard way now. He's not an 82 game guy. But then again, find me stars in the NBA these days who are 82 game guys, and that's a whole nother conversation.
Most of them choose not to play.
Oh, that's the thing. Some of them choose not to play.
Guys that would play 82 games if they could, like Luka Doncic, you're not going to easily get him off the court. But too many of the guys are worried. I mean, the guys that we're only playing 72 games, and guys are already taking games off. What is Kyrie Irving doing? Like
Kyrie Irving's only going to play 10 games this year. That's just we'll talk more about that in the next episode. But Bill, this was a fun episode. Real quick again, you can find all of our archives at thebacksportspage.com. Also, all of our archives are on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, pretty much anywhere you can find podcasts. We're there. We're on YouTube and through the Back Sports Page channel, and our new YouTube channel will be starting up the next week. Bill, let them know where they can find you.
On Twitter, I'm at the Rocket Guy. If I write about basketball, you'll find it at backsportspage.com, and my personal blog is ishmaelslegacy.com, where I write about anything but usually not sports at all. So that's where you can find me.
And I'm over at Randy BSP on Twitter and Instagram. And, of course, I'm on Facebook. And that's about it. Of course, backsportspage.com for all of your sports needs. We have a lot of great shows, a lot of great podcasts, a lot of great young writers making their debut, and follow the journey with them. For Bill Ingram, I'm Randy Zellea. You're now out of the huddle.